Time to do my damn best to make this video work in the way of opinions and discussions and overall stuff, because I know for a fact that I'm probably going to mess up and get scrutinized very, very fast by most people in the community. And you know what? That's what happens when you voice an opinion, and I'm just going to deal with it the best I can. So with the Season of the Worthy about to end, there is a lot of different discussions and opinions about how the season fared, how opinions were to certain quests, to the fact that what's going to happen in the future with the Season 12 and onwards that has caused a different divide between two sides of people. And I want to give my thoughts and opinions to the perspective as best as I can, and obviously the thing I'm going to say straight up is I do not know the perfect answer of what Destiny 2 or what Bungie should do for the future of the series. I do not know anything of the sort. I can only discuss what I feel like should be possible, but this is coming from a different perspective. I know there's people out there who play Destiny 1 more seriously the day it came out than I have. I only technically started playing in 2016, and even then I wasn't able to play too much because I was by myself and didn't have a team. Now I do, but that's besides the point. So Season of the Worthy is being deemed the worst season that Destiny 2 has ever had, or the worst content drop that Destiny has ever had, period. I don't know how I feel about that opinion per se, because Dark Below technically only had like 3 missions. But again, that's a complete DLC for $20 for a season's things for $10. But that's besides the argument. But the main thing is the reason why people feel this is the worst season is this season started with connectivity issues to the point of Code Beaver being a joke within the series. The fact that people immediately did not like the concept of Seraph Towers because of how it entailed, the fact that it was used in public spaces, and people already had a problem with the release of Warmind's Escalation Protocol and the problems that endured. And not only that, the fact that it felt lackluster, it felt like there was going to be, a threat with the Almighty, but there was really much of anything at all that happens. And while all of that is completely true, and I'm not arguing against it being the worst season, but the point that I want to make is sometimes there's going to be bad seasons. After Dawn, with all the stuff that they did with Dawn, it makes sense that this season kind of felt a little lackluster because workflow is very hard. Most people tend to not understand how game development tends to work, and I'm not trying to be an ass when I put that in perspective. But when you actually talk to people about how game development tends to work, especially in the notion of what Destiny 2 is supposed to be, you learn that sometimes things that we take for granted takes usually months of pre-planning to get it working. And they have to do it in such a short amount of time sometimes because on top of them trying to make new content, they're also dealing with the current content since Destiny 2 does its release every week or so. We didn't get to save Saint 14 the Season Dawn in the first week. We got a little pretense the first week, got a mission in the second, I think, or we got a mission the first week. But it wasn't until I think the end of the fourth week that we actually saved Saint 14 and he showed up in the tower. So they've been, that's one of those things where they do it week by week throughout the season, and they did it with Worthy, and they did it with Undying, and they also did it in past seasons, like with Opulence, Drifter, Black Armory, Forsaken, and so on and so forth. So the idea of them releasing things on a week basis is common. So not only do they have to make sure things are prepped and ready for the season of its week, but they also have to start prepping for the season of when it launches, which is in about 2 weeks. And so that's a lot of work for a company that I think is reported to have 600 people, and we do not know which department has what. Not one person can work on one piece of content in literally a day. That is impossible. It takes usually multiple days and multiple people if the communication is right. And obviously, we don't know the full communication of how Bungie operates 100% of the time, so I can't say anything as being factual. I can only go based on information of how game development tends to work overall. And one of the biggest things is they probably do test their game internally. But you know what? Sometimes things will get through the cracks multiple times, even through internal testing. I've seen this multiple times talking to people, where they test something within their servers and their things in-house, but then when it goes live, just something breaks. Just some random occurrence breaks it. And that's what happened with this season right now with the Fellwinter's Lie Quest, or the Lie Quest. With the fact that after people didn't like doing the Seraph Towers, which I'll get to the explanation of that in a moment for me, doing 9 million of those, then finally finishing that, doing 1,000 shotguns, the little mission, although, you know, mission, then shotguns, and then we got to the part where we had to go to the moon, and the moon was bugged on Sunday, you know, after so much time. There was a lot of outrage against it, and I get it, understand. My point is, I understand being upset with something being bugged. I was disappointed myself when I was live streaming the damn thing. So trust me, I'm not immune to that feeling. But what I didn't do was send death threats, insult Bungie, tell them that they're the worst company ever made, or anything of the sort. That's what people were doing. When the community manager posted saying, hey, by the way, it's bugged, we'll look into it in the morning, immediately there was just a response of vitriol against someone just giving a message. And then people talk about how, like, well, you know, this season's the worst because everything is always broken. And I want to go back to one point. Yes, the start of the season, we had code beaver problems, which became the worst thing for Trials. But Trials also has the problem with cheaters and a bunch of other stuff. But that's not what I'm discussing here. The reason why we had the code beaver problems, and they've been upfront with this since the beginning, and some people tend to forget, they had to do a completely system change to their servers because of a bug problem that happened during Dawn, which they had to fix twice. And the only way they could fully fix it was they had to completely rework the network system. That caused a huge problem, which they've been trying to slowly work on. It's not simple. Networking is not simple. Talk to anyone in IT. They tell you it's not simple. It works that way. So, yes, code beaver sucks. I understand. I played through a bunch of games where internet issues always suck. I dealt with it the worst with Warframe multiple times. And it's understandable to be annoyed and upset with those situations, but they are working on it to the best of their ability, and you have to understand that because nothing can be smoothly put out. No game ever launches perfectly in any update regardless. I've seen this with World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft still has problems the day it launches a new expansion. I think last expansion, was the only one that kind of did smooth, but it was still having issues in certain departments. So the Seraph Towers. I understand that a lot of people don't like Seraph Towers being there in the public space, but I feel like this should be a wake-up call to Bungie for them to understand that they might need to rework the way the patrol zones work. Maybe they need to update it to where it could have 12 people instead of 9 people total. Maybe if they're going to do it to where there's public events in some cases, like escalation protocols, since that's the one that's staying because we're losing Seraph Towers. But if they're going to do this as an experiment later down the line, maybe they should find a way to where there's some sort of matchmaking connectivity to where you can automatically connect to a patrol zone that is already working on the event in question, to make it easier so people can get people together so they know, oh, these people's purpose is to do this. Or maybe have a separate loading zone that is strictly just for that event. It's hard to say if that's even possible because of the server setting itself, but it's definitely something they could look into for future realms. I don't mind the concept of these public event situations. I genuinely liked the Seraph Towers. I like how they felt. I like these ideas of these very interesting feelings of raid mechanics within other environments. It's the reason I love Pit of Heresy and Shattered Throne so much, is because I love these ideas of these content that feels relatively difficult, but has enough mechanics that doesn't feel like a difficulty of a raid. And the fact that you can relatively do it with little amount of people, you know? And I like that. I think that's a really cool concept, and it works great. And I would love to see more of that. Escalation Protocols, I think, is a lot of fun, but I wish it had a little bit more going for it than just kill enemies, close a Shadow Rift, and then kill a boss. I wish it had a little bit more going for it. But that was the reason I liked Seraph Towers, was it had the system of protecting the pads, throwing the orbs into the device, and then the balance between that and the enemies, the mini-bosses that will show up multiple times, which is similar to sometimes what raids do when they throw difficult enemies during the mechanics. I really like it. The only difference is there's no wipe mechanic. But I do understand that for a lot of people, it was really boring afterwards. But the main point I will get at with this season is the fact that it didn't feel like there was any urgency. They started with them talking about, oh, the Almighty is coming crashing down. But the fact that we never got a mission is already a bad sign in comparison to Dawn. Because with Dawn, we had that mission where we went into the Sundial, where we went into the pass, where we got to see the House of Rain and Saint 14 on the early days of Mercury. Which I think is in a really, really awesome state to start. The fact, just how it felt, and it actually responded to an old story that we've had since Curse of Osiris, which is the perfect paradox shotgun. The fact that there's a lore tab to it, where it's a shotgun we give to Saint, but how do we give it to Saint if we didn't get revived until he disappeared, but the shotgun only existed in our timeline, and that's become the perfect paradox, and we got that solution, and that's a great lead up. And for many people, that's exciting. For people who love Saint 14's character since the beginnings of his of the lore tabs of his existence, we're even more ecstatic. And then we had another mission where we were able to stop the Vex from stealing his light, which is what caused him to die, and now we have him in the game for Trials of Osiris. That's amazing. But with the Season of the Worthy, we didn't get anything like that. We got a cutscene of Anna and Zavala doing a mission, and then we're just told that we have it coming towards us. But I kind of wish they did a little mission to where we actually were with Anna and Zavala during an attack because we are super important or something. Or maybe they had a counter or information or some text or something that give us the urgency. Maybe they can show on the main map screen to where we could see the Almighty and where it's flying. You know, because it was from Mercury, and maybe, you know, since Mercury is in the top left, almost like the top left corner, and there's Earth, they could just, like, have the Almighty symbol slowly moving, like, maybe a couple pixels every couple of weeks or so, just to show something. Obviously, we know at the end it's not going to hit Earth, we're going to win, that's, you know, that's just kind of an obvious factor, but at the same time, at least it would feel like something. Maybe there could have been something that shows us progress, shows us information, shows something that you know, makes sense to what is going on. But because of how passive it all feels, it feels lackluster. It's why most people kind of ignored the season. I know some people who actually didn't want to buy into the season because of how it felt. You know, it was great, some of the things that we got. Tommy Matchbook, I think, is a great machine gun for what it gives and the perks it gives. It's almost like, I think it's the exotic Touch of Malice or something like that. It's the scout rifle that is almost the same thing. And I think that's a pretty cool thing that they bring into the game. Fourth Horseman returning is great, and what it adds to the game, the different styles, is great, and I like that as well. There's so much that I think they did pretty cool, but it's lackluster because of what Dawn brings. And so I do understand the feeling of this being the worst season, but I also want the person of sometimes that happens. It is impossible to keep a game from being 100% excitable, awesome, and interesting at the same time. And you know what? That's perfectly fine to me. And we'll see what the next season brings, because we definitely are going to get a trailer dropping pretty soon, and let's see how they do, you know? They have a lot to learn. They're on their own, and so I'm willing to give this year a try regardless of how good or bad certain things feels, and we'll go from there. Now the main point that I want to get at, the main discussion that has caused some people to really have a problem with me, and that's fine, because it's my opinion, and obviously if Bungie decides to still go through with it, I will deal with it the best I can, but I'm still going to voice my opinion because we're allowed to do that. So Bungie is going to be releasing a sunsetting system, or weapon retirement system, once Season 12, whatever the new expansion of Year 4 begins. To their eyes, this is their solution to stop the power creep that is happening and the problems with the fact that, as people describe it, as seeing the same weapons every single time. Revoker, Beloved, Mountaintop, Recluse. And I understand that people want more interesting things, more loot to be interesting, aspirational content, a lot of the words that are set out. And most of the people that I hear talking about it are people that came from Destiny 1 and try to bring it up as if Destiny 1 was so much better and so much more interesting than Destiny 2, because Destiny 1 had content that was worth getting, while Destiny 2 doesn't. And I'm in a weird spot because of how much I've been playing Destiny 1 more. I'm trying to figure out why they feel this way. The perspective that I get from a lot of people when it comes to Destiny 1 is because of how content is given to you. The fact that if you do the Siva Strike playlist specifically, Every strike has a chest at the end that you can open up with a skeleton key that has an exclusive weapon based off of the strike. Things like Imago Loop, the hand cannon that most people really say is good to go for. And then you have raids that have a bunch of weapons with very exclusive perks and exclusive armor stuff that only are usable for the raid in question. And so a lot of people say that this makes raid gear important to go after, or it makes certain things important to go after, and that's aspirational content. But in comparison to Destiny 2, where you can easily get anything and everything so easily. People also talk about the fact that with Menagerie, the fact that there's a lot of armor and sets that you can get straight up. Like, for example, Reverie Dawn stuff. Reverie Dawn has a perk that you can get that allows you to do more damage in the Dreaming City, which can be a very good pairing for doing the raid or something like that. But now that you can just earn the armor through the Menagerie, it feels like there's no reason to go to the Dreaming City. People talk about how there's nothing really worth getting on any of the patrol planets, and so because of that, it's hard to make the patrol planets worthy of going to. And I just hear all these things, and I really question why, like, the importance of a lot of this stuff. The fact that in any game, it doesn't matter what you're playing, you're going to get to the point where that content might be not interesting for you to do anymore, or you might get the weapons you want that there's no reason to go for it anymore. But yet, for some reason, they talk about it as in Destiny 1, they were always going for different new gear and new weapons. But if you already have the weapon that's really good with a good perk combination, why do you care about it afterwards? That's the problem with Destiny 2. Now, I get that Destiny 2 has a little bit less of the gear that you can get through Destiny 1, but I also complain that Destiny 1 makes it harder to even get the gear. It doesn't feel fun anymore at that point. For comparison, in Destiny 2, certain Nightfall versions of strikes have a weapon that can drop. You have the Osprey rocket launcher if you do Strange Terrain. You have the Mindbender's Ambition if you do the Hollowed Lair. You have Warden's Law if you do Warden or Nothing. Malicious Birthright if you do the, I forget the name of it for my life of me. I'm sorry, this is embarrassing. But the strike that's on EDZ where you have to go after the Taken. But you can only have a chance of getting those if it's part of the strike of the week, because it only does 3 Nightfalls rotatable in it. But then there's also the Nightfall Ordeal, which can be kind of easier to try and go through it since you don't have to make a pre-main team or have locked content based on that. But the difference is that, again, in Destiny 1, you had to only play through the Siva Strike playlist, and so you have to RNG yourself to get the strike you want. By the end of it, you have to have a skeleton key to open the chest, which is also RNG for the drop. Now, granted, there is a bounty you can do per week for doing a Nightfall streak that guarantees a skeleton key, and if you do it with 3 characters, that's 3 keys you can earn, and I don't know if there's a cap on those keys right now. I think it's like 5 or 10. But still, even if you don't do that, you still have to RNG yourself to get more keys if you wanted to. Then again, not only do you have to RNG the strike through the playlist, but then you have to also RNG the chest opening. And hope to God it drops for you when you open the chest with a key. And so it's a little bit more difficult and time wasting to get the gear you want. And I don't find that worth it. I don't find that worth it. I rather enjoy the content more so in my own way. It's the reason I enjoy raids a little bit. Because, yes, it's RNG if I get, the Sparrow from Scourge that I'm still trying to get to this day. But you want to know what? I enjoy Scourge enough that if I don't get it, hey, I can just do it with another character or do it next week because I enjoy the content that much. And yes, I have a really good No Feelings and Tempo Daimo and Belengiad already. And I have some armor that is starting to replace some of my current armor in a certain way, which I think is pretty cool. But I enjoy the content enough that it's always feeling like it's worth getting. But I hear this argument that raid loot is unimportant because it doesn't have exclusive stuff. This is going to be a controversial opinion massively, but I'm one of those people that despise that kind of idea. It's the reason I do not like Destiny 1's style of content that way. And most people tell me, no, it's good because it makes the loot worth it. And my opinion is, if the loot is only worth because you only get the armor and it's only used really is for the raid, I don't think that's interesting. Because then you have to focus so much time on getting armor that works for you, because then you have to not only get the perks, but then a bunch of other stuff. And I find that tiring. And not only that, it makes it feel like you can't do this raid unless you have these perks, which I think is terrible to ever put on someone. It's similar to when people say, oh, you can only, if you want to raid with us in Vault of Glass, you must have Galahorn. Don't have Galahorn? No raid for you. How about just learn how the game works and find a good tactic in multiple different ways? That's what I've been doing. Like, I'm used to doing Scourge with Outbreak Perfected, but the main mechanic is as long as people get Fade Synergy, it doesn't matter what weapon you use as long as you're able to get the DPS out. Yes, there are ways to cheese it. There's ways to beat it in, like, 5 minutes. But the main point is, as long as you understand the mechanical design of what the game wants you to do, that's the main focus, and that works the greatest. And that's what I like about doing the raids, is I love the content for them. And I love earning the weapons for them. I love earning the titles. But I do understand that that is a personal choice. There are people out there who don't care for titles, who don't care for collection badges, who don't care for triumphs. But I'm not sure what else to say because it's really hard to figure out what they can do. Now, I've heard people bring up, oh, they should bring back the Moments of Triumph, the Age of Triumph book thing that they did in Destiny 1, where they have a system where, oh, there's a weekly raid, where this raid is featured, to where they have special challenges and special things. But how is that any different from what we already have? Every week, every raid has a specific encounter that has a challenge to it. With Scourge, which I've already finished, you have things like finish the first encounter without map control going half, or everyone has at least the continuous angular parallel buff throughout the entire third encounter, or no one can shoot no more than 2 shield generators on a person. Those are interesting challenges that I don't mind repeating myself because they're fun to do and it adds a little bit of interesting insight to the teams that I'm playing with, on top of the fact that I just love earning them. At some point, I plan to earn all the triumphs as I can, even though I'm too scared to try and get the Guard of Salvation or the Rivensbane title in Destiny 2 because of what the challenges entail. I'm still probably going to go for them because there's something to do, there's something fun, there's something that I can mix things up in a certain way, and that is what I like about playing Destiny. It's the same thing that I do with Warframe at times. I mix it up and do some random stuff because it's fun to do. But I don't know how adding a weekly thing is going to really change anything. Yeah, it might drop like an adept weapon like Destiny 1 does if they want to bring adept weapons back into the game, but why does that have to be a reason to do a raid? I understand that that this is a looting game, a loot shooter type of game, and so loot has to be important, but why is loot the focal point and not the content? Why can't both coincide in their own way? Again, I do Scourge, I do Raid, I do Crown of Sorrow, I do these events because I enjoy the mechanics and the fun we do, not because the loot. The loot can be a focal point as to the reason I want to plan it, but most of the time, I enjoy just playing the game. I love how it feels. That's what I want to do. And maybe I'm just the odd person out. Maybe I'm the difference in the community, and there's not a lot of people who feel the same way. And again, I don't know what fix they can do. I really don't. And I know this is a bunch of complaints while I brought up sunsetting, but again, my point is, I don't like sunsetting because it means that weapons that I want to enjoy, I can enjoy to its fullest. I understand people have tried to say, well, it doesn't mean you can't use them anymore. It just means you can't use them on new content. True. It means that I can't bring Blast Furnace into Trials, Iron Banner, or any of the new stuff. I understand what it entails. But that's still hindering a player just because they don't want to fix their actual game. They don't want to change the settings. They don't want to change stuff. They don't want to debuff stuff. Hey, here's an idea. Maybe have those perks that were on Pinnacle weapons and maybe bring them out to other weapons. Maybe have it to where Malicious Birthright has a chance of getting Micro Missile, so it actually has something worth getting, so Mountaintop is not just, a waste of time to earn. Because that's the other problem. People put their time into trying to earn Mountaintop and Recluse and Revoker and all of these weapons, and now you're telling them that, oh, well, we don't want you to use them again, so now people are just not going to get them. And that's not a good thing to do. You do not want to make content worthless like that for people or waste their time for something useless. And imagine any new players that might come in during Season 12, 13, 14, in the future who doesn't know about the fact that these sunsetting things existed. How fair is it that they would slowly try to build a light from 750 all the way to whatever the power level, let's say 1200, and then they find out that their Blast Furnace that they got from Black Armory that they love so much, oh, well, you can't use it past 1060 because it's a year-old content. How is that fair to any new players trying to come on when they realize that weapons they worked for is now pointless? It's similar to what Destiny 1 did with certain weapons, that if they were year 1 weapons, they were stuck at 290 or 260 power, period, and you couldn't do anything about it. Now, yes, people say that there could have been a special updated version for the Rise of Iron, but any weapons that were released during Dark Below, released during House of Wolves, released during the Taken King, are no longer accessible or period to get unless you already earned it. You can never earn it again. A good example from what I've heard is a scout rifle from Dead Orbit called the Hung Jury. Apparently the Hung Jury is like the be-all best-all scout rifle that everyone must have. You can never have it anymore unless you find a way to downgrade your account to a Taken King update. But if you're on Rise of Iron, you're SOL, and you can only have the Rise of Iron gear and stuff. Why? Why is it that you're locking out weapons? I understand armor. I understand if they make it to where armor is locked out, because armor to me is a cosmetical situation and doesn't do anything besides looks and stuff, because the gear that you can get usually is stuff that you can get from anywhere else on any other armor, so it matters on the look. So I understand if they say that armor is, you can't earn this armor from year 1 because of this. But when it comes to weapons that actually have gameplay meanings and gameplay details, you're telling us we can't have that anymore because it's old content. Because you don't want to balance the game. You don't want to fix your game. And I feel like they need to think about that. And again, I know I made the argument that things take time, and I get that, and it's not simple, and there's no simple solution. And yes, I agree with that, and I'm not saying that they should put out a solution today. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to find a solution to deal with the fact that Mountaintop and Revoker is used all the time. But sunsetting is not the option to go. And not only that, someone else brought this up. If they do sunsetting, there's going to be a bunch of weapon classes that are going to be just gone. Obviously, we do not know what is going to happen. We do not know what Season 12 is going to give us. Maybe Season 12 will drop us 50 plus weapons of multiple categories to help offset the sunsetting system. And maybe so. I'm giving them open details to this. I'm not saying I quit Destiny because of sunsetting. I just don't like the idea. Because weapons that I like the look of, I like the feel of, I like everything about it, I'm not allowed to use anymore because of they don't want to actually fix the problems of said weapons. And I don't like that. Some people say, well, it gives me a reason to grind the game again. But why do you need a reason to grind again? Why can't you just play and have fun? What? I don't know. But that is how I just feel about this whole thing. About the whole situation that's going on. And we'll see what the future holds. We have Season 11 coming up that's going to change a lot of stuff. And we'll see what the new expansion hits. We'll see what they're going to do. And we'll go from there. But for me, I'm particularly not happy at the idea of sunsetting, and I don't agree with any of the opinions that people are saying why it's good for the game. I don't think it's ever good for any game, because it makes people feel like their time is wasted and not feeling like they earned anything. But that is just how I feel. That is just my opinion. And I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk through this. I know it mostly is kind of a rant, I guess, but I'm trying my best to give my opinions on paper because it's a lot that's on my mind. But with that, I hope you have a wonderful day and take care, and thank you so much for listening to me. Take care.